By wisdom a house is built, by understanding it is established, and by knowledge the rooms are filled with all pleasant and precious riches. Proverbs 24 verses 3 and 4. Hello ladies, welcome to Homemaking Radio. Hope you get a lot done while you listen, and I hope I can keep you good company and give you peace and maybe something to laugh about as we go around about doing our housework, and also knowing that it is an isolated job. I have found out there's no way around it. But whenever you get a problem where you can't seem to surmount it, what you do is you figure out how to use it. You can use it as a shield, and you can also use it as a place to have some kind of goal. Use it. You can use isolation in many ways. When you think of isolation, if you look back to people that have started back in the olden days, people that had to do things on their own, how the towns were started, how the world was explored, and how people did it often not so much in a group, but often on their own or with one other person. You start thinking of the home as a great opportunity and a great pioneer experience. Many people have become authors because they lived at home or they were taking care of someone, and that was what they did in their isolation. And many people have discovered new ways to do things in the home because of their isolation. Your thinking clears up because there's not a lot of people around you. There aren't any distractions, and it's very difficult to work in a group, and except your own family, where you've all got a common goal. And today I would like to start out with your appearance, because if you are walking around in circles wondering where to start, especially if you're new at homemaking, you're going to feel like your mind is in a whirl. So the first thing I would suggest you do is get dressed and get prepared and fix yourself up and look pretty. And I'd like to show you my teacup before you get started, and because most of this will be listening. And today I'm showing you a teacup which you have never seen before, and it is called Ashdean. And Ashdean is Australian, and I ordered it from when the web first began. There was a tea company that no longer exists, but she specialized in Ashdean. It looks like on the bottom, and I just loved them. And there were several, and they're lightweight. I really like them. But there were several patterns, and they came in a very pretty box. Isn't that nice? So I have 3 of them that I keep in these boxes. I might give them away as gifts, but I do use them sometimes, and they're very precious to me and go with my dress. Now today I'm wearing a dress that I made, and I would like to share with you a pattern that you might be able to use. It'd be easy for some of you who don't sew very much, and I will show you the one that I'm wearing, and I will put that on the post so you can see it. I won't show it to you right now. And I have a few things I'd like to talk to you about. And first of all, if you could make a list, and the list could just maybe be 3 things: get dressed, homemaking, and other. Maybe it's instructing your children, maybe it's sewing, something like that. Just list 3 things that you'd like to do, or that you have to do. I like to list a few things I have to do, and then I'd like to list some things I would like to do, things that I'd like to do eventually, and make sure you put something in there that's leisure. And so if you would like to go and get dressed, and your appearance is something that I think is so important to begin your day with at home, because it indicates that this house and this home and this responsibility and duty that you have at home is worthy of getting dressed. It's worthy of having a good appearance for it, and I think you'll have a better attitude towards the house, and it won't feel like drudgery. Everything is a bit repetitive in any job, but in the home there is great reward because you're doing it for yourself, and you're self-employed, and it's for you. And so I would suggest, of course, you get yourself a cup of tea, sit down and make yourself your list. And of course the queen is not coming, so you might as well get out your best and use it, and let the children use the things that you have that are good, because they're for you. And there's no use waiting for something to happen. You have to make it happen at home, and you can create many celebrations and memories for the home. And getting dressed is the beginning of it. It's very helpful. Now, I have shown you my newsletter from last time, and I had a little phrase in here I'd like to read to you, and it was about refinement. And as a result of this newsletter, I got several newsletters of yours in the mail. And I feel like Mrs. Hamley, when she first met Molly, she said, "I think we shall be great friends. I like your face." And I was looking at your newsletters and I was thinking, I think we'll be great friends. I love your newsletters. And the one verse that I quoted when we were talking about refinement, taking away the unnecessary things, taking away the dirty things, the dross, and just keeping the good stuff, the silver, where God said, "Behold, I have refined you, but not as silver. I have tried you in the furnace of affliction." And we're going to discuss that, or I'm going to discuss that with you. And later on, when we talk about the people things, everybody likes that when we get to the people stuff. It's just interesting, isn't it, interacting with people? And I've learned a lot over the years, and I have a broad experience because I've been a preacher's wife since 1972, and I didn't actually know. I always thought I was just going to be Mr. S's wife, and I didn't realize I was also going to have some conflict with people if I didn't learn how to say things, if I didn't learn how to respond to things. And I grew up in a very large family, and of course in a large family you have a lot more interaction going on, and I learned a lot from that. So I really would recommend, if you have some spare time, which, who has spare time, is to write a newsletter. And I told you, just do one side, put a few drawings on there, put a little recipe, put a quiz for children, or some sayings, or just something from your heart on there. I would show you the ones that I received, and I loved them. Do you know that I like it that they're folded this way, and they come in one of those long business envelopes. And someone had sent me one that had a Christmas stamp on it of a mother and child, and I really liked that. And another lady sent me one that had an antique train on it, and you know how I like trains, because my house is a train. And you'll have to go back to an older video to figure that one out. And so today I would like you to think about doing a newsletter. You just have to write. Why don't you just do something? I've divided it into columns because I can get more on here. But you could just say, today this is what I'd like to do, and write down your list and say, this is what I'm going to do today, and make a newsletter out of it, or make your own little newspaper. And this is what I'd like the children to do, and this is what I'd like to do, and this is here's some of the honeydew projects. But so this is something that you can do, and what I like about it is it gives you something to think about besides washing dishes, which is important. And I use things like putting things away and unloading things and washing things. I use them as a thinking time. That is a time when I can think about something that I would like to do afterwards, or I have my mind on a couple of things. And the other thing is that you can pour your heart out on a page. You can put your feelings out on a page, and it's something that you might look forward to at the very beginning of the day, or the very end of the day, or after you've done something, to promise yourself to write a little newsletter. It doesn't matter about your handwriting so much, as long as we can read it, and it's part of your personality. And you also it's like getting dressed in the morning. It's like grooming yourself and preparing yourself. You get when you write a newsletter, you get a stronger sense of God's presence and your worth and the purpose of being here in this world. And you can write a lot of things that come from deep within. So now I want to move on to the house. And I might not do much housework today. I might not talk about much housework, but I'm making a little progress. So I just wanted to share with you some of the things that I've done that have helped me make progress. and that is the daily work, to make sure that that's something you can actually rush through if you want to. I don't like rushing myself. I don't like rushing children, but sometimes it's necessary. The daily work, the dishes, the laundry, the anything that needs to be picked up, and the just daily stuff. And so what I've done is I have made sure that I have one extra thing on I have a master list. And the master list are all these things that are so fantastic. A person couldn't do them all. And things like that. Closet needs to be cleaned out. Certain door needs to be painted. And this needs to be sewn. And I need to clean out this drawer. And I'll just list this total master list. And I don't put any pressure on myself if I can just get the daily work done. But I like to go to the master list and pick out something and just do it. So I have one extra thing to do. And I feel I'm getting closer. Now, of course, all you need, and this is the way it is in a home, all you need is for some emergency, some disaster, or something in which you are urgently needed and you have to abandon it all and go. And that is the thing but now that so many more people are home, I think they're finding more time. The yards are looking nice, and all the homemaking supplies are gone from the stores as people are home more. I noticed even the furniture, the patio furniture, everything is looking really slim, and because people are buying it up and making their homes, if you have to stay home, you might as well be happy and have it look nice. So I would like to move on a little bit now to a book here. But you don't have to watch anything. You can still, if you got something you need to do. I originally designed these for cleaning a bedroom if you want to really do more than just make the bed. If you had to change the bedding, or if you had to just sweep and move things around and do different things like that. And I said that it would probably get you through a whole bedroom. But you can also use it to clean the kitchen. Kitchens are very tedious, aren't they? And of course, we want help from our children. We want them to learn to do it right. And it's going to take a little longer when you have a child at your elbow, because you're going to have to patiently train them. And I've known mothers who said it was just too much trouble to teach their children how to clean a kitchen. It's just easier for them to do it themselves. But even then, these children could watch and see what their mother did and learn from that. But I particularly liked the company. I'd like to read to you today from a book called Grammar and Composition 1, and it's by A. Becca. It's a Christian school book, private school book, but there were several things in here that I liked, and I hope that I can find them. Good grief. I've already lost my place, but there were several places here. Don't know what I did with the it was on punctuation, but okay, I found it. Okay, this is something called Recognizing Helping Verbs. Now, I am not sure what grade this is. Maybe it's 3rd grade. I don't know. But you could teach it to anybody, and this is the teacher's manual because somebody made off with the student manual. And anytime you are ordering, I would just suggest that you as a person just order this and go through it yourself, Grammar and Composition 1, because you're going to see something so different than you've ever experienced with your own education, and it changes you. It's just something that is so deep. It's one thing, it's like it's one thing to know how to read and write, but it's another thing to know what to read and write and how to use it as a personal response to your family and to God. And so there's something so different about this. So here is one called Recognizing Helping Verbs. Now, whether or not you're homeschooling doesn't matter, because this is going to help you in your homemaking, and especially give me a little filler here so that I can speak while you're working. Underline the verb phrases in the following paragraph. Well, of course, they've previously taught you about verbs and their uses, and verb phrases, and helping verbs. Okay, they've already taught you this, so I won't I won't say anything about it. And you might not be able to recognize it here, but listen to the thoughts. Listen to how they use a wonderful paragraph to divide into what is it you do to a sentence when you take it apart and you analyze it as according to the verbs and the adjectives and the subject and the predicate. Well, they've taken a very thoughtful paragraph here, and that's what the big difference is between a Christian education and the failing government school education. Okay, one of the reasons it fails is because it fails to give the mind some purpose. You can learn the high and dry method of grammar and composition just to get by, but to learn it from a Christian perspective is so different. So I just want to read this to you, even if you're not homeschooling. And if you're a teacher, this could be a very helpful book. It's put out by A. Becca, Grammar and Composition #1. Underline the verb phrases in the following paragraph. It's called Recognizing Helping Verbs. Do not underline a word unless it shows action or unless it is one of the words in the verb list that you have memorized. Now, I didn't believe in memorizing. I thought it'd be better just to give them a list to refer to on anything, math or times tables. Just when you want to know what it is, go back and look and see what it is on the times tables. And after referring back to it a number of times, you wouldn't have to because you'd remember. And that was a better way of memorization. You know, when you read the Bible a number of times, after a while, I never memorized scripture. I just read it enough and ran across the phrases enough that eventually I could repeat them. And that took a lifetime. Okay, here's this wonderful paragraph. So I hope you found something to do and that this would help you. You're probably right in the middle of something that's not very pleasant. Maybe you're scrubbing a frying pan or something. And so this will help. We should always be cheerful. The times may be difficult, but a sad and gloomy countenance will not make them easier. The flower is made by the sunshine. It is not made by the clouds. Our hearts can be filled with warmth from the good things around us. We may have troubles, but we should not allow discouragement. No one can be completely free from problems. We should extract courage and fortitude from them, and then we can receive the maximum happiness from each day. I can tell you what's going to go into my next newsletter. I'm just going to copy that. And speaking of copying, I don't know if any of you remember in the olden days, but people used to have blank books, and what they would do is they would read something and copy it into the blank book. It could be a saying, it could be a scripture, it could be something from a published book, it could be from a magazine, and they would just collect all these things in a blank book. They would put the name of the author, whoever wrote it, or some little thing that they wrote, and we don't have that anymore. The blank, I don't know what they were called, these kind of books. They weren't the same as the autograph books, but they were just blank books and people wrote in them. Sometimes you can find them in an antique store, but that's a good thing to start. Just get a blank book with lines and have people write, have your children or just you do it. I think it's better. You know, I've always believed that we should not require anything of our children that we're not willing to do ourselves. That's why I say get one of these books and just go through it. Start a blank book and write all these sayings in it, and it'll be something your children will want. If you fight over it when they're grown up, they will want to have it. And or make blank books for each child and write all these sayings in these blank books for them. A child will also do what they see his parent doing. And one thing that Mr. S used to include a little illustration in sermons was the man who was so upset over his sons who were not following in the paths in which they had been so carefully directed, and they had gone into the world and they weren't living up to their full potential. And the father said, okay, what is it you want your sons to be like? What do you want them to do? So it was in the days of the chalkboard, in the olden days. So here's a piece of chalk, and you write on the chalkboard everything that you want your sons to be. to be like, to be, to do, whatever. And so the man spent some time writing down everything, and through his tears was able to make a list of all the character qualities and all the talents that these boys had, and how he wanted them to um, use these talents and find love in their life and have good families. And so and all other things, pursuing their work ethic and things that to accomplish in their careers or whatever. Just little, and it wasn't big things like be something, some kind of career person, but it was just the qualities. And so the minister read all of the things this man had written down, and he said, okay, you want your sons to be like this? Then go and do likewise. He said, be everything that you want your sons to be. So anything that you want for your, oh, I wish my children would write more. I wish they would paint more. I wish they would sing more. I wish they would practice more kindness or neatness or look after themselves better. Then you start doing it. You start taking care of yourself. First thing in the morning, take care of your appearance. Then sit down and write in your little book. Read your Bible, sing a little song, and go out and work in the garden and do all those things that you wish your children would do, that you want your children to do, because I don't think you should require anything of them that you're not willing to do themselves. So another thing I want to warn you about is you really, in these books, you just really need 1 page for the child a day. You don't need to make them do 10 pages. Because they need to dwell on, just like what I just read to you, they need to dwell on that. And I will try to read that again to you before this session is over. And I also want to now go into a section on here called using quotation marks. Now, what they do is they give you a paragraph, and then you use quotation marks in it, just like this other paragraph where they used, goodness, I've already lost it. I seem to have, where they used a beautiful paragraph and wanted them to underline the helping verbs. So here's a paragraph. And this is what the earth-shaking difference is, and that's why I loved it so much. Now, I think I appreciated it more because I had missed out on it, and at last I had found something that, see, what this kind of education does is it gives a child his identity and his meaning in life, and he knows he's here for a purpose, and he loves life. I don't think that you feel that the same way with any other kind of education. I want to read this to you, and it's called Using Quotation Marks. So now this is written without quotation marks, and the student has to go through and put the quotation marks around the sayings. Now what this is the teacher's manual, and the teacher's manual always includes the text for the children. So I bought teacher's manuals and let them have the teacher's manuals too, because there's no difference between trying to figure it out and copying it. You're still going to learn. So they figure it out, as they see it. And it's not like I'm trying to trick them or test them all the time. Another thing that I want to bring up is to be careful about the type of books and workbooks that you get, because if you get the fill-in-the-blank type things, there's too many fill-in-the-blanks. This is just one of my pet peeves. Now, some people like that, and they seem to thrive on it, but for myself, when I was growing up, a fill-in-the-blank thing made me anxious, because I would hunt and peck the text just to get the answers for the fill-in-the-blanks, and I never really did get the entire gist of the teaching. And it's the same with Bible classes, ladies' Bible class that I've had to teach for years and years and years. I could hardly wait for them to not want these workbooks, because they were hunt and peck, and they would take hours out of your time to get the answers out of the scriptures, and it was a blank. And so I was so glad when we finally decided not to have workbooks, because we would just read a paragraph out of the scriptures the next week when they came, and then we would continue with the next paragraph after they came the next time, and that was our text. The Bible's already got a text for you, and so we would just see what we could find out from the paragraph or the chapter that we read, and some of the observations were just beautiful that the women made, and there's no right answer or wrong answer. We just all get to look at it and see what it says. And the hunt and peck thing, trying to fill in the blanks and then draw lines from this thing to that thing, to me, was not something wrong with that. Now, some people, if you want to do it for fun, like a crossword puzzle type of thing, that's fine. But for serious learning, I'm not, especially Bible type spiritual things, I'm not sure about it. Okay. Use quotation. Rewrite the following dialogue, supplying quotation marks and paragraphing correctly. Now, then again, if you've got something to do, I hope that you'll go do. There's nothing, I'm not going to show you anything else here. But if you're not interested in homeschooling, this is me homeschooling you. Because you're home and you're washing dishes or you're folding things. So you're just getting a Christian education right now. An author is known by his writings, a mother by her daughter, a fool by his words, and all men by their companions, said Dad. We are creatures of imitation, and our habits are largely formed on the model of those with whom we regularly associate. Better be alone than in bad company. Jerry replied, "Is that what the Bible means when it talks about evil companions corrupting good manners?" Yes, evil qualities are catching, as well as diseases, and the mind is perhaps more liable to infection than the body. Go with mean people and you will think life is mean. Dad, I suppose that evil company is like tobacco smoke. One cannot be long in its presence without carrying away its smell. That's right, Jerry. If you wish to be respected, if you desire happiness and not misery, I advise you to associate with the intelligent and the good. So that is just something where they have to put the quotation marks in it, and I can't show you where, but here's another section of quotation marks. And did you notice something? While we want our children, to, and us too, when we're writing our newsletter, to put quotation marks in the right place, the most important thing is, what are we putting quotation marks around? Good things, good thoughts, things that are good for the soul, things that are good for the character. And that's why I like the Christian education, and I particularly like ABECA, but there are other, there's Rod and Staff, and there's other things. You still have to watch out for, this is, flawed, this is man-made, this isn't special, the Bible is special, but this is a tool that you can use to understand the Bible when you're trying to educate children. And also, there will be flaws in it. Every now and then you might see something that's misquoted or is misinterpreted, and you have to watch out for it, and that's why you're the mother, and that's why you're guiding them. So I'll just read a few more statements that you have to put quotation marks around, just to show you the sweetness and the goodness and the love that's in this Christian education. One of my favorite hymns is "How Firm a Foundation." "What misery accompanies those who do not know the Lord," exclaimed the preacher. Don't just assume that they can write a sentence like the quick red fox jumped over the lazy dog, and assume that, oh well, they'll learn all the parts of speech that way, and they can dissect it all that way, because they're reading a nonsensical statement. Not anything wrong with it, but if it's not tempered, or if it's not grounded by statements of truth, then there's going to be something missing. Yes, they can be educated and they can be book smart, but they won't be people smart, and they won't. How many people have you known that were very well educated but really didn't have a lot of common sense? This also gives you common sense. So just let me read you a couple more here. This is also the book that has how to write a letter, how to outline it, how to address an envelope. And that's really, really important, because if you're going to address an envelope, it has to be done in a certain way, first things first. and there's a way. Okay. So here are some more sentences to put quotation marks around. Peace is such a precious jewel, said Matthew Henry, that I would give anything for it but the truth. Now think about that. Not just about where the quotation marks go, but think about that. Would you trade truth for anything? Would you trade truth for peace? It is the good Christian who asks, should I do this? It is the bad who asks, can I do this? You know, just because you can do something doesn't mean you should. Just because legitimately you could do something, maybe you could correct somebody very sharply, just because you can does not mean you should. You want to think about what that's going to do for future relationships. I'll bring that up later. A wise counselor said, never anticipate wealth from any other source than labor. He who waits for the dead men's shoes may have to go a long time barefoot. You have to think about that for a while. And I saw a quote just the other day on the web, and it said that economy comes from people working and nothing else. The economy is built by people and nothing else. What do you think of this statement? Truthfulness is a cornerstone in character, and if it is not firmly laid in youth, there will be ever after a weak spot in the foundation. Honesty is not only the first step towards greatness, declared the speaker, it is greatness itself. Oh, what a rich inheritance a spotless reputation leaves, exclaimed the judge. So, I wanted to leave you with that because this is such a, there's just such a encouragement, because you know what you're going to be doing? You're going to be building up your children. You're going to be building one another up through this kind of curriculum. You're going to be, you're going to have life. You won't go through those so much discouragement where you're wondering, what in the world am I doing? How much purpose do I have? And if you don't have children to educate at home, get yourself one of these and give yourself a Christian education. Just Grammar and Composition 1 by A. Becca. And just go ahead and go through it. I would, if you're just going to educate yourself, go ahead and order the teacher's manual also, but order the work text too so that you can be a student. Now, one thing that I would caution you about if you are homeschooling your children is to be careful about the quiz books and the test books and things like that. They're not near as important as people think, because of course the quizzes and the tests don't always bring out everything in the text that you want them to see, and it also makes people anxious. So I wouldn't recommend them. I just recommend that they know what they have read and to tell you back to you. And that's what I would say. Have them read it and write it and come back and tell you what they learned. That is the best way, best method there is. And don't try to imitate public school procedure in your home, because it only works in that setting. It's only in the group that kind of thing has to be used. But at home it doesn't, because you have this personal interaction between the child and the parent, and you grow together. Wish I could explain that to you better, but basically the way I'm teaching you is the way I'm doing it. I'm probably not going to read you the questions, but if you respond to that, that's fine. So now I want to talk to you more about the current events, and so if you want to go on to do something else, you go ahead and do that. But I just got to thinking, of course, in my area where we live, we never stopped. I went into town every day and I kind of observed what was going on and observed what people were buying by what the empty shelves were. And of course, we've been all restocked. The trucking has come in and everything's restocked and stocked to the head of the gills and the top of the ceiling, and shopping is going on. And we never really did stop, except the schools were closed. And because the schools were closed, people were with their children, and it's just really interesting. At first, everybody seemed a little tense, but then towards the end of 2 months, they're happy and they're relating more to their own families, and they're making life at home pleasant. If you're going to be home, you might as well make it pleasant, and get what you need to stay at home. But I wanted to talk a little bit about when there's an illness. Now, there's always been a flu or a virus going around, and everybody apparently carries some kind of virus. Nobody knows what they have, and I guess you're born with viruses, but what I noticed was if someone was sick and there was a virus going around, that person never wanted to shut down the whole world just because there was a virus going around. They never wanted the shops shut, and they didn't want everybody to have to be isolated at home because they were sick or because a number of people were sick. And this, my parents and grandparents went through scarlet fever. I ran into a woman the other day who stopped me at Walmart to talk to me, and I didn't even know who she was. But she told me she'd been through. She had scarlet fever. She was a little bit older than me, and was talking about how they used to handle any kind of disease that went around as the sick people stayed home, and that business kept going because that kept people well and in providing for these people and even providing for the sick. So I just wanted to talk to you about that. But the problem of being at home a lot more than normal can sometimes bring tension. So I wanted to talk about that a little bit so you can be more better. And that is, Jesus said, a house divided against itself cannot stand. So I wanted to tell you also that if you are anxious about any of the stuff that's going on and you're wondering what in the world all this crazy stuff is going on in the world, to listen to the X22 report, because it gives a different view of it in a positive way to show you the good things that are happening. And there are a lot of good things happening, and it's a great time to be alive. And I was going to discuss this, a furnace of affliction, where in Isaiah 48:10, God said, I have not tried you as silver, but I have tried you in the furnace of affliction. Well, what happens when you enter hard times is all the unnecessary things of your personality go bye-bye, and the strong part will come out. And it's just like keeping house. If you get yourself in a mess where you've got to figure out, how am I going to get out of this, all the complaining goes aside, and all the fear and all the dread, you just get into it and you start doing it, and that all the dross and all the parts of your personality that don't matter, that aren't getting the job done, are gone, and the good strength comes out. And that's how you are gone through the furnace of affliction. So I wanted to also talk about children fighting and how you can figure this out, because this is also a way that they learn to test each other's mettle and how to test each other's personalities, how to get along with each other. But sometimes you will get some that are particularly troublesome. And one thing that I noticed was, back in the olden days when we had comedies, now not all comedy today is clean and good, and even the one I'm going to recommend, I'd say watch it by yourself, okay? So you can figure out a few things, and you can, because these scripts that were written for this particular comedy that I'm telling you about were quite clever, and they bring out some of these things people do, and because we had grown up watching these things, we thought, oh no, that's one of those things from Carol Burnett, and they had such a brilliant way of doing it. And so there was a segment called, an episode called Sorry, and what it was the family. It was Eunice and Mickey and Mama, and you and get over the fact that the mama is the one that's always aggravating everyone, because it could be anybody. That could be any character. That could be the brother. That could be the sister. That could be the husband. Could be the wife, and it could be the uncle. But they assigned it all to these particular characters. But don't make a stereotype that only the mama does that, because It, it's what you want to analyze in when watching this. And in this game of sorry, what happened was the first thing that Eunice did wrong, when you first open up this, I'll put the link for you, but I wouldn't suggest you watch it with your children until you've watched it yourself. They sometimes uh, say a few things you might not want. Small children around, they act, because it's just acting, and they act mad and they yell at each other and everything. But I just want you, as a mother, if you're having, only if you're having trouble, I cannot think of any other, I couldn't think of any other thing, and this is just me. Don't pay any attention to it if you don't like it. But the first thing is the scene opens up with Eunice saying to her husband, her mother has gone upstairs to tuck the boys in bed, and she's been apparently there for her birthday, or I think there was another episode called the Mama's Birthday, so you could watch both of them, Sorry and Mama's Birthday. But you'll see how these arguments start, and it's part of the script, so they know where it's going, and they know what people are like. It's almost like they know human nature. So the first thing that happens that I could see was that in the opening scene, Mama has gone upstairs, and Eunice is alone with her husband, and she said, Mama seems to be in such a good mood. I thought maybe she would notice how dry the pot roast was that I made. And was it too dry for you? And he said, oh no, dear, it was just delicious. Well, see, the first thing she did wrong was she planted some words in her husband's mind, which he's going to rehearse and spit out again. So she should have kept her mouth shut. But of course, this is a comedy, and this is but I'm just analyzing it for you, okay? So she said, I thought the pot roast was a little too dry, and I thought Mama might bring it up. She should have not said that, because what she did was she demeaned herself. And anytime you do that, you give people fuel. You give them ammunition. You give them material to work with. So you don't say something like that, because it gives them a point at which they can stab you in the back over. Don't demean yourself. Don't run yourself down. And don't say, oh, I'm always losing something, because then sometime later you get in the car and your husband or a child or somebody will say, Mama, you're always losing something. You see how you're going to set yourself up that way. Then the other thing that happened was the mother came back down the stairs and said something kind of that digged into her daughter. And then the husband, who was weak, chimed in and said, yeah, well, that pot roast was kind of dry. I'm still trying to digest it. So, he just kind of joined in. And that's another thing that you can do, is you can say, okay, but you hear negative said about this person, don't join in. Don't don't add to the wound. And so you watch this and you start to see them goad each other. And a couple of characters are weak, and one of them is just trying to be nice and wants to be happy, and another character just wants to pour cold water on everything they say. So if you'll watch Sorry and Mama's Birthday, you can see how in all it disintegrates finally into nothing. And I've seen this happen when I was younger, and I couldn't figure it out. I couldn't figure out what was going on. But when you watch this comedy, you see they've got it figured out, and it's just human nature. And it's been going on forever, Even in the Bible, you'll find Cain and Abel, and you'll find Miriam and Moses, and you'll find all these rebellious people, and the things that they said, and you'll find out how one thing leads to another. And this is, that book that I brought out here called Man in Demand, and the other one was called The Christian Charm Course. They had a cartoon series in there that showed the yes way and the no way to talk to people, and how the no way, the negative way, brought out the worst in people and created arguments. And so those two books too, be sure and get those. And it's by Wayne and Emily Hunter, and I don't know if there's an updated version, but I had an older one. And so then the other one that you might want to watch in the Carol Burnett series, and like I say, as an adult, just watch it yourself, because before you determine whether or not your teenage children should even watch it. But even then, teenagers today be better off watching the old Carol Burnett shows than they would some of the stuff that's going on right now, because it showed real characters. It showed some characters just talk too much and they're happy and everything, but they don't realize that they're giving ammunition and fuel to someone else who is looking for a way to dig at someone else. And then how to keep your mouth shut so that they don't, so that you don't become a target. Have you ever been in a group of people where everything you said somebody seemed to object to it until finally you just shut down? You know, some people just think that's the way you make life interesting. They don't think anything's wrong with it. So then the other one was the preacher. Now that was another Carol Burnett episode, and I was watching it the other day because I thought, I wonder if I could learn something from this. And knowing what I know about the Bible and being in the preacher's world for so many years, I've seen this comedy in real life, and that is they go to church and they're so happy, and in this case the husband had wanted to go to church so that he could also take the family out to eat afterwards. And that's something, you know, that many of us looked forward to, because coming straight home sometimes it's such a letdown from the high that you get from church and the social things and just the happiness and everything. You come home and it feels a little bit strange. So we always like to go from church to, my dad would take us on a drive. Or when I got married, my husband liked to go out, so he'd take us out after church. And it was just kind of a slower letdown from church. And in this particular episode, I believe the husband's name was Mickey, and he had taken his mother-in-law and his wife out to church, but he said, I want to go out to eat breakfast afterwards, and he was looking forward to it. But when he brought them back home, brought his mother-in-law back home, she didn't want to, and she wanted to make him eat the porridge instead. And he was upset because he says, I work all week and I was looking forward to going out to breakfast. And he said, well, I'll just put more butter on it, or sugar or something. And so when he reached for the butter, she said, you know, that butter costs money. And she just spoiled the whole thing. But I have seen this whole church scenario where they go to church and they come, and this is what they did in this little episode, was talk about how wonderful the sermon was. And it was all about how we should love one another and forgive one another. And then, while they were talking about it, they started picking on one another. And then one of them said, I've decided I'm just going to forgive you for, and then started listing all these offenses and all these sins, and that made the other person mad. And we have to learn how to do that without starting a fire again, you know. And so anyway, this might be a good one, you know, for you to watch with your children. I don't know. We watched them when we were pretty young, but after getting into homeschooling, I've been more discerning about some things that I thought were quite okay, you know, but for my children, maybe not. So anyway, I just suggest those 2-3 things. And so here's where it starts. And I'll read this little passage back to you because I just love it so much. So here's where it starts. It starts when you shoot back a hasty reply. And remember when I was talking about refinement in my last video, that I suggested that the one thing that you could refine out of your personality is the hasty, sharp reply. The abrupt, where you almost interrupt a person or talk over their last word just to suddenly say something. Well, that's not what. Well, that's not. And it's so disturbing, especially if you're saying it to someone who is real sensitive and doesn't deserve it. But then, of course, there are always those that do deserve it, but I still don't think that it's good for you. It's not good for you. You know, it's not all about what people deserve, but you've got to also realize that you are violating your relationship with God when you speak like that to people, because you have a relationship with people. And that is how you show your love to God, is through these people. And so it starts when you shoot back a hasty reply. Let's say two people are sitting in a room and someone innocently says something and somebody puts a downer on it. Somebody says something cruel back. A hasty, sharp reply that triggers the other person. And so there are only a couple things you can do about this. Stop the hasty, sharp reply, or don't dig when you say something, don't dig. And I always told you about not adding on the insult at the end. Somebody says, where are my, has anyone seen my shoes? And somebody else says, well, yeah, I've seen them. Don't you know anything? And see, they're adding the little dig on the end of the sentence. Or maybe the dig actually is saying, without the words, you dummy. That's what the dig is saying at the end. Or would anyone like to go outside with me and go for a walk? And somebody will say, well, yeah, I would if this or that. Or, and it's always got to be the cutting remark at the end. If you cut off that cutting remark at the end, and the other person who is the recipient of the dig or the sharp reply that's trying to trigger them has to learn to let it flow over them like water off of a duck's back, and just shrug it off. They have to. And I must say, it probably becomes more of a preacher's wife's job to do this because she's dealing with more people than her own family. But somebody will say something that's just absolutely uncalled for, and I'll just have to smile, shut my mouth, and walk away. It starts when you shoot back a hasty reply that triggers the other person. The other person should practice not feeling it, not letting it get into them at all. And in refinement classes, if you were in a refinement class, you would role play. You'd role play with your teacher. It'd be kind of like a script, and you'd have a script, and then you would have a surprise script quiz where the teacher would introduce something that would be unpleasant and to see if they could get an answer out of you. Now, Mr. S worked in the airport where in a little section where you processed people's passports, and where you inspected their bags or something, and you had to be careful because there were some things they couldn't take through that were just prohibited, and he had to go through classes that goaded him, that were deliberately designed to make him mad. Ask a same stupid question over and over, or say it in a different way, or insult the person. And he was the only one of his class that got 100% pass. He's so patient. So you'd learn to role play if you were having a refinement class. And you could probably create a refinement class yourself for your children. And also in dealing with people that when they get to where they are critical or full of accusations, everything they accuse you of is what they are doing themselves. And you can, if I had time, I would have gone through the Bible and shown you where people had done this, where they blamed someone else or they accused someone when they themselves were doing it. And that's why Christ said to take the log out of your own eye before attempting to take the splinter out of someone else's. And because everything that someone accuses you of is what they're doing themselves. Have you ever gotten a long spiel or a letter from someone and they accuse you of a whole bunch of stuff, like maybe a 10-page letter telling you all your faults and stuff? If you started to analyze it, you'll notice that they did every one of those things. The things that they are accusing you of are things that they do themselves. Now, you have to learn to accessorize. You need to learn to accessorize your speech. And that's what I've been doing recently, too, is trying to figure out how to accessorize your speech for the naysayer, for the negative person. This is what we deal with in life, isn't it, all the time? And even God dealt with it when he had to correct the prophets who were getting discouraged and who were wanting to refuse to do the work that they were sent to do because nobody was helping them and no one was on his side and everybody was against them. You accessorize your speech. And the way that I think that might be a nice way to do it is you're in a group or you're with someone, a sister, a friend, anyone, and you've said something and they are the ones that say, it remains to be seen, or they will say, well, not always. Well, and they want to correct every little thing. Every little thing. Well, if you learn their phrases, you can use them. So what you're doing is you're saying, it's a very nice day today, and we might get together and have a nice cup of tea. Of course, it might not work out that way. So what you do is you add their phrase on there. And then you'll hear them say, oh, no, no, we could do that. We could do that. But what you do is you get the jump on them. You get ahead of them and you add their phrases to it. You will say, I am going to try to get something finished to give to you for your birthday, but it remains to be seen. I'm not sure I'll do that. They'll say, oh, is there anything I could do to help? So use their negative remarks, memorize their own war tactics, and use them ahead of them. So get the jump on them. They don't have them anymore. They don't have to say them. So accessorize your speech and use their phrases at the end of everything positive. Say, of course, we don't know what will be tomorrow. It might not happen. And of course, the world might come to an end first. And that sort of thing. And get your jump on some of these negative people. And now another thing about quarreling is this. It means that people are not absorbed enough in something that is a passion with them, like art, creativity, gardening, speech making, singing, music, fiddling. They're not absorbed enough. If they're absorbed in something, they're building. If the people that I've known that weren't argumentative were people that were creative, and they were so busy. And the argumentative people are only creative in creating arguments. But they were so busy that they didn't spend any time at all in quarreling and picking on someone else. And even in large families, I noticed that we all had something that we liked, especially reading. We knew if we were reading, we weren't in trouble, and we were occupied. So people who are always quarreling are not absorbed, are not achieving anything. So you're wasting time, and you'll find as you get older you really regret it if you wasted any time in long, long arguments. As a matter of fact, we ran across this in Our Lady's Bible study last Thursday when we're talking. Paul was talking to Timothy and talking about don't get involved in quarreling and going over and over words and trying to wrest words and in arguing about things. And I'll probably try to include that for you in the end of this. And I hope, ladies, that you got something done today. And I am going to read this wonderful paragraph to you again. Okay? We should always be cheerful. The times may be difficult, but a sad and gloomy countenance will not make them easier. The flower is made by the sunshine. It is not made by the clouds. Our hearts can be filled with the warmth from the good things around us. We may have troubles, but we should not allow discouragement. No one can be completely free from problems. We should extract courage and fortitude from them. We should look on the bright side of everything, and then we can receive the maximum happiness from each day. Does this sound like somebody from Pride and Prejudice? One of the sisters, I've forgotten what her name was. It was the one that was before Lydia. I'm trying to think what her name was. But she always had some philosophical thing to say. But I was thinking about this in view of, it says here, our hearts can be filled with the warmth from the good things around us. See, I'm using this for something else besides recognizing helping verbs. But our hearts can be filled with warmth from the good things around us. Let's talk about the good things around us. Let's talk about the beauty around us. And I think this is where tea comes in. Serve a nice cup of tea. And that is such a relief. When my ladies come to class here, see, they're all farm women. They live very hard lives. They don't live in luxury like I do. And they don't, they're mostly out feeding their sheep or doing some kind of gardening. And when they come to my house, you can just see the relief in them, and all they want is that hot cup of tea in that fine teacup. It's amazing how small of a gesture that is and how much they like it. I try to keep that one area of the house cleaned up. The rest of my house is kind of a disaster. But I do keep that one front room cleaned up with the beautiful picture view, and the table always has a pretty tablecloth on it. I'll put a picture of that for when I get ready for next week. But that to them is one of the good things around us. Our hearts can be filled with warmth from the good things around us. So I'll read that to you once more, and then I'll say goodbye. We should always be cheerful. The times may be difficult, but a sad and gloomy countenance will not make them easier. Isn't that the truth? The flower is made by the sunshine. It is not made by the clouds. Our hearts can be filled with warmth from the good things around us. We may have troubles, but we should not allow discouragement. No one can be completely free from problems. We should extract courage and fortitude from them. We should look on the bright side of everything, and then we can receive the maximum happiness from each day. Thank you, ladies. I'm very honored that you came to listen, and I hope you got something done, and I hope that you felt like you've been built up. And so I'll see you next time. Bye.